Let's dive into our topic, though, this week, Jake. And again, we're talking about philosophy style absolutes and the mechanics of high level hitters. And first thing, before we sort of peel back the onion, so to speak, and dive into all three, that's my crutch word today, dive. We're going to talk about let's talk a little bit about the similarities of philosophy style and absolutes, and then we'll sort of touch on how they're different, because if I'm not mistaken, there are similarities, but there's certainly plenty of differences.
One of the two glaring, it's a little bit different now, but the two glaring differences of philosophy would be, linear hitting, if you will, and rotational hitting. So,
sure, Charlie Lau against, right.
And I think now is probably a really good time. I should probably post something like this, but the word rotational hitting, so there was only linear hitting, there was nothing called rotational hitting. It was just linear hitting. In the late 90s, my dad was, like I said, he was mentoring with Ted Williams and blah, blah, blah. And Ted's like, you need to come out with a videotape. Okay. My dad's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll come out with a videotape. And so my dad used the word rotational because it was kind of the opposite of linear, and it was a marketing word. It wasn't a new type of hitting. It was hitting that's been going on since Shoeless Joe Jackson, but he needed a term to use. So he used the term rotational. That's where it was coined. It wasn't a new type of hitting, is what everybody talks about. So I find that funny. There was this huge debate for 20 years, rotational, linear, blah, blah, blah. There really isn't any linear hitting anymore. But if you think about the absolutes and you go back to Charlie Lau's book, I think it was The Art of Hitting 300, and George Brett's in it, and the pictures are just awful. Like, nobody ever got into those positions, especially George Brett. But, the idea behind what Charlie Lau was teaching was staying on plane as long as possible, right? It wasn't swinging down. It was staying on plane. If you shift all your way from your back leg to your front leg and you follow through one-handed, your barrel will stay on plane longer. That was the idea for it, and the problem was, my daddy played with Charlie, and he said Charlie would just, take BP, and he would just hit these little soft line drives the other way. And that was his style of hitting, and that's what he wanted to kind of teach everybody. And so my dad, kind of coined the whole rotational thing, which was straight out of Williams' book in his mouth, which was stay on plane. You have to create separation and torque, and you have to stay inside the ball. So the absolutes, it's funny, like the idea of staying on plane has been around for a really long time, both linear and rotational. But how we do that is really the nuts and bolts of what, how can we make adjustments? How can we create bat speed and power and stay on plane? And really, those are the philosophies. The more currently, I would say, philosophies would be, you have your major leaguers that are out there that have experience and played the game for a long time, and they know how to practice and they know how to prepare, and then they know how hard it is to get into a batter's box and face somebody throwing 96 miles an hour and changing speeds. And then you have, you can call it a younger generation, but I don't think it's really that much younger. A lot of them are, which is data-driven guys that are like, okay, we have to create as much bat speed as possible. We have to hit the ball on this angle. Our barrel has to be on this angle. And then you have guys that kind of take that to a new level. So we're trying to mesh what actually works in a live situation when pitchers are trying to get you out versus just having good data. And I can tell you from a recruiting standpoint, from my time in college and then consulting with a lot of colleges before then, there are so many showcase players out there. So many guys that can hit a ball 100 miles an hour off the tee. So many guys that can run a 6.5 60. So many guys that can throw 90 from the outfield that are just not hitters. They have one swing. It's one speed. It's in one spot. And they never get out of fall baseball. And they were number 10 on the perfect game, ranking board. They were a top level recruit. Sure. And I don't know how many college coaches that I've talked to that have said, we have a lot of showcase players. And it's not, and I think that's the big difference between what the big leaguers, guys with big league experience are saying versus data people that are just concerned about, hit tracks data, blast data, all that kind of stuff. How do we combine those two? I think that's the goal to make a great player.